Well, howdy everyone. We are in one of my grow closets here, and we are looking at another sub-irrigated planter of mine, a SIP. You could also call it a wicking bed because that's basically what it is. So this setup is a little bit different than the other one that I showed you the other day. For this setup, I have a store-bought 2x4 flood tray, and it is filled with grow stones, although hydroton would work and perlite would certainly work. And it is again, I am using smart pots. You can use any kind of fabric pot you want. Some people even use those disposable shopping bags from Walmart, but I'd recommend a smart pot or something similar. Anyhow, there are 3 plants on this bed, and originally this particular setup was used for a top feed drip irrigation system, and rather than dismantle everything, I left the manifold in place and I ran my tubes from it to a pipe that's perforated, and they fit inside it. They basically drip out the bottom and through the stones, and then as they go through the stones, there is, you can't see it because it's buried by the stones, but there is an outlet alongside that white standpipe, and from there it drains directly into my reservoir, which is a 27-gallon tote. It's covered right now. I keep insulation on top so that the water inside won't get too warm. I'm going to get to the back here and show you the feed that I have for this. Basically what we have is a piece of PVC pipe. I believe it's an inch and a quarter, maybe inch and a half, I don't remember exactly. And I drilled some holes in it and inserted the drip feed tubes. You can see there's a lot of water coming out, and it just sits on the surface back here, and that water runs into the stones, into the outlet, which maybe I can uncover. You can see there is water down there underneath. Here it is. Okay, it's kind of hard to get a shot in here of this. Okay, so you can see it, and you can see there's water percolating through. So anyway, this system is working well. Plants are healthy, they're big. I'm going to do a two-part video. This is going to be the generic version to keep YouTube happy, and so I don't have to restrict the video, because really this is about the system, not the plants so much that are in it. But I do want to show you the plants, and that will be in a separate video, and for that one I will restrict it because I can't have anybody under 21 looking at it, because God knows they might get an idea in their head. Not that they don't have one anyway if they're already looking at it, but you know, it's kind of stupid, but that's the way it is. You know, you can't kill an idea. If people want to grow marijuana, or they want to watch people grow marijuana, they're going to find a way to do it. It doesn't go away just because you restrict content or anything like that. Anyhow, this system is automated also, and the water recirculates. There's a pump in the reservoir that I showed you. It's connected with a piece of tubing to a flood and drain fitting, and then that flood and drain fitting has a 3/4 inch thread, and you put a adapter in there, and 3/4 to 1/2, and a piece of 1/2 inch riser, and the manifold is another deal. You don't have to do it this way. I just thought that putting it in the back, because no matter what I do, there's a slight slope to the front. I think the house that I'm in is unlevel, and I figured putting it in the back gives it a chance to equally flow through all the stones in here, and that should make things work a little bit more evenly. So far, this has worked great. The plants are being watered, and they are not getting overwatered at all, so everything is working out great. This really is the simplest way I could find to do it. If you take away the recirculating part, basically what you have here is a wicking bed. You know, I see a lot of bed planters, and they have stuff in the bottom, and then they have a plastic layer and all kinds of stuff to keep soil out of the wicking bed itself. And to me, it just seems a lot simpler to use something like a smart pot to hold your grow media and set it on a wicking bed. And so the stones work as a wicking bed. It is a sub-irrigated planter, but I think wicking bed is another good way to describe it, because capillary action, which is what waters the plants, is wicking. And it's been used for a long time in hydroponics. It's a very simple system, pretty much bulletproof, as long as you have a media that wicks well. And I would like to recommend, I see a lot of stuff online where people talk about using peat or potting soil, and I really would like to discourage you from doing that. I really recommend that you use cocoa. And the best cocoa out there, in my opinion, is can of cocoa. You can get it in bricks, so you don't need to buy a big bulky bag of it, and you don't need to buy a bulky bag of potting soil. You can get it in bricks. There's like 2 bricks in a pack. They are about, oh, I don't know, it's maybe 12 inches long. No, well, they're probably about 8 inches wide and about maybe 16 inches long. Anyway, it's a pretty compact package. All you have to do is put it in a bucket and add water. They're made so you can break each brick in half easily. They will probably make, I'd say 1 brick will fill up a 5-gallon bucket full to the top, maybe even a little bit more. You really only need to probably, I basically use 1/4 of a brick, and that usually gives me enough to fill up a bunch of smart pots, especially if you're replanting, because you already have the root ball and everything, so you don't need quite as much. But the thing about cocoa, it wicks really well. It wicks better than peat. It doesn't compact. And also, peat is very acidic. It's like a pH of 4.5 or something like that, whereas cocoa naturally is around 6.2, which is perfect for growing plants. So in order to use peat or potting soil, which is mostly made from peat, they have to add a lot of crushed limestone. And what happens over time, that limestone leaches out and leaves you with a very acidic grow media, which is not good for your plants. They cannot take up the proper nutrients. If you've ever looked at a feed chart for hydroponics or soil, you'll see that when things get really acidic, plants can't take up the necessary nutrients. Instead, they take up a lot of stuff that you don't want them to take up, like aluminum, and it's not a good situation. So I really recommend, if you're going to use this system, growing cocoa. It's actually usually cheaper than potting soil, and maybe about the same as compressed peat, I don't know. The other thing, for environmental reasons, cocoa is a byproduct from when they harvest the cocoa shells. Peat is strip mined, and peat is finite. It's going to get used up. You know, you're tearing up the earth, whereas cocoa is made from stuff that they used to throw away. As far as cocoa goes, I do want to say, to use a good brand, like I said, I like Canna, but cocoa, because it tends to grow close to the seashore, can have a high amount of salt in it, and if you get a cheap brand, they may not leach all the salt out, and that's not good. But Canna is leached. All you have to do is wet it, and it's ready to go. The only other consideration is that cocoa likes a lot of magnesium. It has a structure that holds on to calcium and it holds on to magnesium, but it also has other things in the structure, and in order to really grow successfully, you need to drive those other elements out and get the cation exchange sites filled with magnesium and calcium. So a lot of times, if you're growing in cocoa, you will use a CalMag supplement, and I like to use Cali Magic from General Hydro. It's a really good product. It has a little bit of nitrogen and a little bit of iron added, and then calcium and magnesium. Some people use Epsom salts, which you can do, but that's about the only thing about cocoa, is you're going to probably need to add some magnesium, and don't count on whatever fertilizer you use having enough. So anyhow, I've only been running this bed for a couple of weeks now, but the plants have done really well in it, and it actually seems to work a little better than the other beds, just because of the way the water is being put in the back, and it's not being all dumped in the front where it has to recirculate around. So I think this is a really good system. You don't have to use a flood tray. Like I said, you know, you can make a bed out of pretty much anything that can support the weight of the stones and the plants. I see a lot of beds that are big and tall and they're filled with soil, but I think honestly this is a much simpler setup, and the smart pots contain the media so it doesn't plug up your or get into your reservoir itself, and or sub-reservoir, because really my reservoir stays clean. Everything is in the pots, and if anything does get loose, it gets trapped by the stones pretty much before it goes in to my 27-gallon reservoir. So these things do use water. You do need to monitor the level of your main reservoir, and if you have a big one like I have here, these plants are pretty big. They're about 5 feet tall, and they go through a few gallons every couple days. Plants use water at different rates and different stages. When plants are small, they don't use a lot of water, but as they get larger, like for example, if you're growing tomato plants, once they set fruit, they're going to be drinking a lot of water because they've got to support their stems, their leaves, and all the fruit. But as the plants ripen, they start to use less water again. So your water level and your water usage will vary depending on your crop and the growth stage that it's in. So I am gonna cut this video short now, and I am gonna film part 2 and show you the plants that are in here.